Hey guys, welcome back to the College of Valor. I'm here with my dad, Kurt. I'm here with my dad, Kurt. Dad, what are you
Hello.
doing?
Hi. Someone wonderful bought me some new goggles for my birthday, and I'm enjoying them. I just wear them around the house now.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Well, it's pretty awesome. I'm glad you have your storm lens on because it looks like it's pretty snowy where you are right now.
Yeah, it's coming down really hard outside, but luckily not in here, but I still see better with these on, so that's good.
That's great.
Welcome to the College of Valor, where we empower truth seekers with the art of reason. Hope is the motivation, truth is the goal. Everyday valor is the practice, better living is the result.
Okay, so today we are talking about candor and the importance of candor, why it matters, why it's so crucial to have candor, especially in relationships. So, I'm going to start off by kind of giving us a definition of candor. This is from Merriam Webster, and their definition is unreserved, honest, or sincere expression. It's kind of telling the truth at the time that it needs to be told in a really honest, pragmatic kind of way. The number one reason why relationships can fail and can be so difficult is actually just from a lack of healthy communication in relationships. And that can happen due to a lack of candor. Dad, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that sounds way too serious for me to answer with goggles on. So you like my goggly eyes?
Yes.
Okay. Wow. Candor. Okay. Everyone listen up. Honesty, which is candor's first cousin, is probably the most important attribute of anyone's character if they want to live a good, rich, meaningful life. And candor is how you manage to communicate honesty. So I think candor is incredibly important. And I'm going to add one more thing. I do not know why, but I do not find much candor in the world today. And that is horrible. That's a travesty. So we got to sort this out. Why does candor matter so much?
Candor really matters because it's a powerful catalyst for building a loving relationship.
Mm,
I really think that candor is kind of what helps love to flow really smoothly in a relationship. I think it's also key to a really healthy and joyful coexistence just because you can find so much freedom when you're acting out of candor and um you're just not afraid of speaking the truth when it needs to be said, and I think
mm.
that that's really crucial.
I think that part of candor requires some sensitivity. Candor is not lying when it's socially convenient, right? Candor is telling the truth when it's inconvenient, but that requires a little bit of sensitivity. And I think that the truth can be spoken in love and the truth can be spoken with respect. Um, and really, I think that that's what we need to practice because speaking the truth is uber critical. You're not going to get anywhere in life if you're just always telling little fibs or little white lies or outright lies. If you're one of these people that lies his or her way through life, then that's probably the first problem that you need to fix because you can't build a life that way. It just won't work. Can't
Yeah.
happen. So, Lydia, the definition of candor, it's a little bit nebulous still to me. So maybe we should give some examples. For instance, what do you say to your wife when she says, "Does my butt make these jeans look fat?" Yeah, I said it that way on purpose.
Well, there are a few different paths that this could go down. You could lie and say, "No, honey, those jeans make you look great." And then she could go out looking horrible because those jeans do not
Yikes.
fit her correctly.
That's not candor. Okay. Next.
You could also say, "Oh yeah, you look horrible. You're
Ooh,
fat.
that
You need to lose weight." That's not the kind of response that we're talking about here.
guys don't go there. That would be candor, but that's not properly applied candor.
Right. So we're talking about candor through the lens of love, which would be something along the lines of, I think that we could find some jeans that will fit you better, that are a better cut for your body type.
Ooh. Now I like that because you didn't criticize the person, but you still said we can do better and let's do that. And you're helpful with it. So that's candor. You got the point across and you were honest. Yeah, that's cool. Maybe this is slightly off track, but I don't really think so. It seems like these days it's very, very common for people to say, "Hey, we're going to go do a such and such on Friday night. Will you come?" And the response is, "Yeah, I'd love to. That's awesome." And then Friday night rolls around, and what happens?
They flake out.
Flake out. Hmm. So what's going on there? It just seems like it's pretty common that people flake out. You know how hurtful that is? People plan in advance to spend some time with you because they like you. They want to be around you. You're a friend or maybe something more than a friend, and you flake on them. Lydia, help us out there. What's going on?
Well, it's difficult because you're put in a position that you don't want to be in. It's obvious that you don't want to hang out with that person for one reason or another. It
Hmm.
could be something as simple as I'll say yes now and maybe I'll get a better offer later, or I'm just not feeling like it tonight, or, something along those lines. But in in those situations, kind of not worrying about the more extreme circumstances why you wouldn't show up. I think that the the easiest thing to do is to say yes initially and then just kind of ghost them. Just
Yeah.
not really communicate because you don't want to um, run into a potential conflict, or have that negative feeling of saying no to someone. You kind of passively say no, which is it ends up feeling a lot worse for the person
Lame.
on the other side.
That's lame.
Yeah. So
It's not just that it hurts the other person. It makes you look like a boy. I almost cussed. I seriously, really? There's got to be a more mature way to handle the situation.
yeah. So in that scenario, I would probably, say something along the lines of, "Wow, thank you so much for the invite. I really appreciate that. But I will not be going because of X, Y, or Z. And
Mm.
I'll have to catch you next time." So that's still honest. It gives people time to plan and they feel really loved because you thanked them for the invite. It's also setting really clear expectations. You're using candor in that scenario. You're being truthful with them, and that makes people feel a lot better than they would have felt if you had just kind of ignored the request or if you flaked out at the last second.
Yeah, flaking out at the last second is horrible.
Yeah. Another
Um,
example that comes up so much in my generation is ghosting. Especially in romantic relationships lately, in the world of online dating, there are so many people that are chatting on the apps, and they are starting to, take an interest in the other person, and then all of a sudden the other person just drops off the face of the map, and you can't
what's up with that?
you can't talk to him at all. And that is also an avoidant behavior. It's avoiding a potential conflict of saying, "Yeah, I don't actually like you enough to hang out with you, or I decided I'm not attracted to you after all, or something along those lines, instead of actually explaining the situation and bringing some closure to the other person. They just kind of drop out of the chat.
That's not necessarily a new thing, although I do believe that um, modern technology, texting especially, maybe a little social media, cell phones, they've made it a lot easier to do that. And I think that in a way people feel like that's socially acceptable and somewhat normal, but I'm telling you, it is not right. It is so disrespectful and so weak. You are a coward if you choose to ghost somebody to get rid of their attention. You are a coward. And that's mean. It hurts people. And what are you doing to yourself when you act like that? I mean, I sound like I'm coming down hard on it. In my day, when I was dating, I did have some girls ghost me. It happened. It was incredibly frustrating. I can tell you how I felt. I didn't know if they were busy, if they were sick, if their phone quit working. I didn't know if maybe they had a family emergency. I would try to find out what was going on just because suddenly they dropped off the face of the earth. And then to find out that they were there all along and they just didn't have the guts to say no, thank you, that was really hurtful. But I can say this: when a girl did that to me, I was very glad not to be with her because I don't believe in that kind of immature crap. Ooh, I overstated it, maybe. I don't know. Are you ghosting people in your life? I'm sorry. I didn't mean to offend you, but there's a better way. It's called candor. Maybe we should give some examples, Lydia. What would be some good candor ways to handle that sort of a situation?
Well, I would not say it's not you, it's me.
That's not candor either. That's a lie.
um, I, I was thinking about this earlier and I was like, you know what? Candor is caring. It's great.
Oh,
It's,
yeah.
it's kind of mustering up the courage that you need to be able to be really truthful and honest in a loving way to somebody else. And by doing that, instead of like stabbing them and twisting the knife, you're actually um, applying, a healing ointment to a wound, even though it might not feel like that at the time. Your words or
Yeah.
your lack of words can cut really deep, but by using candor through the lens of love, it can really help soften situations and allow people to have closure that they need for healing, especially if it's a really negative situation. I would just say, like, a few times in my life, I've had people that are really close to me just drop off the face of the earth.
Hmm.
And I never found out why. They didn't tell me. There didn't seem to be any reason for it because one moment we were having so much fun, and then the next moment they were just gone. In that situation, it would have felt so much better for them to just say, I don't like you anymore and I don't want to be friends with you.
Wow.
That would have felt better. Anything would have felt better than giving me the silent treatment.
Yeah, the ghosting. You know what I think one common side effect of ghosting is? The person who's been ghosted, the ghostee instead of the ghoster, right? It's very common for someone to say, well, what's wrong with me? What did I do? And then the imagination runs wild. And man, you drop down the rabbit hole and you can spiral into some really dark places completely unnecessarily. Why? Because we all wonder what other people think of us. And we may not fixate on it, but some of us do. But even the most confident, self assured person is going to ask that question: what did I do wrong? What's wrong with me? And that may not be necessary.
Right.
Um, that's why I think it's important to give a reason and to be very, very clear about it. break up with your boyfriend right now, how are you going to do it?
Obviously, if I'm breaking up with somebody, there's a pretty good reason for it. You
Yeah.
know, I would just say that if there are really tough foundational discrepancies between the two people, then that would probably be a reason why I would break up with someone.
So how would you tell that person?
I I would just say, "Hey, this has been a really awesome time to be able to get to know you, to understand your world and what's going on in your life. And I just want to thank you so much for allowing me into that world. But, after getting to know each other better, I've noticed that XYZ in my life and your life are very, very different. And because of that, I don't think that we're compatible for a long term relationship with each other. And I want you to know that I deeply care about you. I think that you're an awesome person in so many ways. But because of those reasons, I have to break up with you.
Wow, you know what I love about that? You you showed gratitude. You acknowledged the effort that they had put into the relationship. You acknowledged some great qualities that, the other person had. And then you were specific. You said, because of this thing, we don't align. And that's a deal breaker for me. I can't do it. And, you're a great person, but this is over. I like it because it's specific. You don't leave the other person guessing. And by the way, that specific reason cannot be an excuse. You can't make up some flippant, silly little thing. You got to be real about it, right?
Because of your new haircut.
Yes. I don't like the mohawk nearly as much as I thought I would when I talked you into it. Um, if that's the level of your relationship, what are you doing anyway? Okay. But I really like that. You were the specificity, the directness, and the kindness all together. I think I give that a 5 out of 5. That's the way to
Oh,
do it.
thank you.
Yeah, that was really good. I dated a girl for a long time and was pretty young when we started dating. And little by little, I began to recognize how the relationship had some dynamics that long term were not going to be healthy. And I loved this gal, but I finally realized it was irresponsible of me, even though I loved her, to stay with her because we would hurt each other so badly.
Mm,
And that's how I broke up. I said, I love you too much to stay together. We're not good for each other.
yeah. Wow.
And, it's really hard to do something like that, but it was absolutely the right thing. And I'm sure of that. Sometimes that's what it is. You know, I love you too much for us to stay together because love doesn't allow me to take advantage of you or to try to change you in ways that you're never going to change or to manipulate this relationship into something it's never going to be. Love doesn't do that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, sometimes that's what it takes.
I was also thinking about candor just through the lens of using candor with yourself, because as a rule, people are very negative towards themselves or more
Mm,
critical of themselves than other
hmm.
people are of them.
Right.
And we've heard the saying over and over again, you are your own worst critic, and I think that that's really true. So another aspect of this is using candor with yourself, being very honest and truthful with yourself about um who you are, and
Yeah.
actually, instead of focusing on some of the negative attributes, you can be really honest with yourself about those negative attributes and try to work through them and become a better person. But I also believe that it's so crucial to be able to say, hey, self, I love you. And I think that you're really great because of the way that you do X, Y, and Z, or because of how your personality is so awesome in this way. And I just want you to know that I know that you're not perfect, but we're working on it. And I'm just going to love you through this process of growing, you know?
Wow. You know what I call that? My little shorthand term for that is the mirror.
Mm,
And I mean the mirror on purpose. It's not just an allegory or some sort of a metaphor. Look yourself in the mirror and don't look to see if your hair's messed up or what's stuck in your teeth or that sort of thing. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about looking deeply into your own eyes. Make eye contact with yourself. That can be very scary. And the harder it is to do that, the more you need it
yeah.
because you're being dishonest with yourself. If you can't look yourself in the eye, it's because you're telling yourself lies. And it is so much more effective when you do that positive self talk, Lydia, or that realistic self talk, when you exercise candor with your own self, it's so much more effective if you can make eye contact and say it out loud.
Yeah.
It's just sometimes it's shattering, honestly, to do that. And if it's really, really tough, if you can't do that, consider professional help. It goes that deep. If it's just really, really hard, you still may want to seek out someone that you can work through some things with. And is it okay if we talk about defense mechanisms for just a little bit?
Yeah, I think that we should because that's a huge part of candor.
Yeah. So, defense mechanisms are when we play games with ourselves and with others to manage uncomfortable situations or uncomfortable realities in our lives. And all of them have their root in one place. They're dishonest. They're a lack of candor, and people don't even know that they're doing them for the most part. But once you know what defense mechanisms are, and if you see them in your own life, then you can say, oh, there's a growth area, and I'm going to be so much better of a person if I can get past this one. Some defense mechanisms, we should list just a few, just as an example, but one is called projection. And that's where instead of acknowledging your own faults, you may not even believe you have those faults, but you see them in everyone else. And you're always pointing the blame at someone else for what's actually wrong with you. That's called projection. Very, very common. The alcoholic who calls everyone else a drunk, the person who has a raging temper that just accuses everyone else of being too angry all the time. That's the sort of thing we're talking about. Here's another one. Let's see. Splitting. At first, it's like, well, how is that a defense mechanism? But if you think it through, it really is. Splitting is when somebody is never a whole person. They're either all good or all bad. And so you have a friend and you just love this person, you adore this person, and that person hangs the moon, is so wonderful until she says something hurtful to you. And then immediately that person can't be in your life anymore and she's all bad. What a evil, evil witch. That's splitting. The problem is that we assign excessive blame by calling someone all bad when the reality is every single person in this world is a mixed bag. We all have strengths, we all have weaknesses. And so if you want to be in a relationship with somebody, eventually you're going to find out what their dark side is. And you can't just throw them out of your life because they did one thing or they showed you one part of their personality you're uncomfortable with. If you do that with everybody in your life, you will never have long-term relationships. You'll never have growing relationships. You'll never have friends that can weather the hard times with you. Splitting is
Mm-hmm.
very common. And here's something very funny about splitting. It's actually a developmental stage among children. Children do this as a matter of course at a certain age. The problem is when You're older and you're still doing it. You never grew up. So splitting is bad, destroys the potential for really life-giving relationships. Can you think of some others, Lid?
I haven't studied this as much as you have.
Well, there are actually more than a dozen that are really, really common. And tell you what, I want to list a couple more, but maybe go on with the next thing, and I'm going to look it up so I can talk to it a little bit more because a couple more examples would help.
A lot of people think of candor and being honest with somebody else as causing a lot of extra potential conflict that might not need to be there. Just causing a lot of chaos when in actuality candor through the lens of love is an antidote to chaos. Chaos involves a lot of um guessing games and what ifs and that overthinking and rumination that comes along with somebody not being wholly honest with you or straightforward with you or just offering reasoning as to why they are doing what they are doing. So I guess all that to say, I would encourage you if you're feeling a lot of chaos in your life to look at ways where you can include a lot of candor in your life and you can kind of set the example for other people in your life as well and start promoting the new fad of um, candor is caring.
Candor is caring. I love it. You know, candor is honesty, and these defense mechanisms that we were talking about is the opposite of that. You're being dishonest with yourself and others. A couple more real fast, just because it makes sense, is like repression or suppression. Um, those are kind of two sides of the same coin, but it's when you won't admit to yourself that you had a bad experience. You suppress it so deeply down in your psyche that you never deal. You never learn how to process a horrible thing that happened in your life. And on the one hand, you don't even know you're doing it; it's unconscious. And on the other hand, you do know you're doing it, but you still don't manage those harsh emotions. And one of the challenges with that is pain always gets out. If you don't deal with it, it's going to come out in other ways, and it can manifest as disease, physical problems in your body, but it can also come out in your relationships. You'll have trigger points. You don't know where it came from, right? Because you suppressed or repressed something that you really needed to pull out and manage. Another one, really big one, is denial, right? And denial is just when certain facts or perceptions about yourself will not or seemingly cannot be acknowledged. It's like, no, that can't be. I am not like that. I am not the person who would do XYZ. That's not me. I didn't do that. No. And the reality is that often we aren't what we want to be. And instead of denying that, we need to dive in to that. And then we can begin to heal. We can begin to fix it. Right. So this is about candor with yourself, but it also empowers you to have more candor with others. So, and I love what you're saying, Lid, how it reduces the chaos in your life.
Yeah.
You know, one cause of chaos is when you're dishonest because you start telling lies to cover your lies, and then you forget what was a lie and who you told what, and you end up contradicting yourself, and it gets really complicated and really, really messy because you're not using candor, and people will find you out. They always will find you out. Dishonesty never pays. So,
Yeah. People can sense it.
oh yeah, absolutely. It's not, and sometimes it's not just a sensation. I mean, they will literally find you out. You tell one friend, no, I can't go out to, the restaurant with you tonight because I have too much algebra homework. And then you go out with another friend and then they talk to each other. Or another friend calls and you say, oh no, I don't want to do that because my mom told me that I have to clean my room. I mean, these are, like junior and high school statements, but it happens as adults too. And those lies, people find out because they compare notes. They're like, what? Here's an
Yeah.
example. I love this one. May I tell the story about the friend who called with math problems?
Yeah, sure.
He's a smart guy. So a group of friends, there are like 4 or 5 of us. We're all taking this math class together. And one night, one of the guys in the group calls me up and says, "Man, I can't figure out number 25." I'm like, "All right, here, let's work on it." So we sort it out. He goes, "Oh, number 12 is hard too." And I do that. I'm like, "Okay, that's cool." He goes, "Man, thanks for the help. That really helps." Well, the next day, we're staying around in the group, and this guy hadn't gotten there yet. And someone said, "Golly, he calls me with these math problems all the time. He did last night." And I'm like, "Wait a minute, he called me last night." And then someone else in the group says, "Me too." And I said, "Oh, I did number 12 and 25. What did you do?" "Oh, I did 10 and 19." Turns out we did his whole assignment for him.
Wow. Dang.
Anyway, it was hilarious, but that wasn't candor. That was pretty dishonest, I think, you know? But
Yeah,
it's
well,
so
it caused
funny.
a lot of chaos for him, I bet, after you guys were like, yo, dude.
We found him out. That's the point. It always happens. It always
Yeah.
happens. So why not just be honest? Reduce the chaos in your life.
I wanted to ask you, for all of our listeners out there, can you think of a couple ways where we can practically and pragmatically just add a little bit of candor into our everyday lives?
You know, learning how to use more candor, it probably pays to start small. I think starting by looking in the mirror is a good place to start, because then you'll identify areas that you're like, "Ooh, I'm actually not proud of that." So seek out ways to fix that. But one way might be, for example, that you just always make excuses for yourself instead of being honest. And so you say, "Okay, I need to quit making excuses." Now, it's important anytime you want to get rid of a behavior not to focus on getting rid of that behavior. Acknowledge that's what you're
Hmm.
doing. But if
Yeah.
you focus on that, you're most likely going to fail, because we always go toward what we concentrate on, right? In mountain biking, if you look at the rock you don't want to hit, you're going to hit it. You got to look at the gap you want to hit. And that way you miss the rock. It's just, it's life. That's the way that life works. So you say you don't want to use excuses anymore, then seek to give real reasons, or to just say, "No, thanks, I'm sorry." You don't always have to explain yourself, but you can make it a goal. I'm going to be real with people. I'm going to be genuine, and I'm not going to make excuses.
Mm,
And so
I
by
love that.
focusing on being genuine, you will overcome the excuse habit, and you'll feel better about yourself. You really will.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I I witnessed this the other day because I was actually in a situation where messing up was not the right thing to do. Like,
High
it,
consequence.
yeah. But I made a small mistake and I just came right out and said it. I just said, I messed up. I need help.
There you go.
And that, you know, at that time, there were a few different options that I could have taken. I could have tried to cover my tracks with, some sort of white lie or something like that. And I could have tried to remember that.
Yeah.
Or I could have just passively ignored it and hoped that no one would notice. Or I just could wave a big white flag saying, help, help.
I appreciate that. Earlier in my career, I was really surprised, and I don't even remember who this person was, but I just remember someone saying, "Oh, dang, my bad. I'll fix it." And I was like, I like that.
Mm.
It's not just a matter of, I'll do it right next time. It's a matter of, I accept responsibility for my actions and I'm going to fix that. And you know what? That made me respect that person,
Oh
even though they
man. Yeah.
admitted to messing up. They were just like, "Oh, my bad. I'll fix it." No excuses, just, okay, moving on. Problem
Yeah.
solved.
Oh, that's so awesome.
It's powerful.
You know what was super crazy about my situation? After I waved that white flag saying, "Help, I made a mistake," I got rewarded with extremely
Mm,
positive feedback
yep.
and accolades.
Let's talk about the college class scenario. This is real common. People are sitting in class and you're sitting there and you're going like, I am not getting this at all. And you look around and everyone's looking so confident and paying attention. And you're just like, I am lost. And finally you say, Professor, I'm sorry. Could you take a few steps back and help me understand this? And all of a sudden there are 12 other people in the room going, yeah, what was that? I didn't get that either. Like, what? Be the one that's brave enough to admit you don't know, you don't understand, and you'll find out that many other people are in the same boat and they're going to appreciate the fact that you bailed them out.
Right. Yeah. That was my job in college. I was like, I don't know.
Yep. And it works in life. It works in life. Another thing that you can do is if you don't know the answer to something, then you don't need to buffalo. Don't BS somebody. Just say, you know what? I don't know, but I'm going to find out. I'll get back to you on that. People
Yeah.
respect that a lot. And guess what? Nobody knows everything. So when you're honest about that, then people know, oh, I can trust this person not to make some crap up and try to feed it to me, you know?
Yeah. Absolutely.
So candor works. I gotta, I gotta tell you one quick little anecdote about my junior high choir teacher. I never knew a teacher that was so well loved as this lady. The students adored her and they learned so much from her, and she created world-class junior high choirs. And I think that one of the secrets to her success was her candor. Matter of fact, she was so good at it that I nominated her for National Teacher of the Year. Went out of my way to try to do that later in life because she blew me away with how honest she was. And she didn't do it out of hurt or out of anger. But when you were in her choir and you weren't messing or you weren't doing it right, you're messing up a little bit, she'd call you out. She'd say, let's learn to do this right. We're not going to sit around and do things wrong over and over again. Let me help you with this because I care. Everyone knew she cared. And that was part of the trick. She led with love every day. She
Mm.
led with, we're going to be great. We're going to work on this together. We're going to solve problems. And then she called people out and she showed them the path forward. If you were screwing up, she didn't pull any punches. She wasn't mean or harsh, but man, she was honest.
Oh,
Oh,
that's so awesome. Because you
yeah.
know where you stand in that scenario and you can be more honest with yourself too. Because you can say, oh, wow, I had a mistake. She showed me that. I fixed it. Now I know that I sound good.
Yeah. Yeah. Instead of saying, oh, I didn't realize that I was messing it up for everybody. Now I know I'm doing it right. And I feel good about that. Yeah. We got to talk about the big one, Lydia, before we wrap this up.
Okay. What's the big one?
Sex.
Oh, yeah, that I forget that that exists.
I'm not sure if I believe you. Um, Sex in relationships. People, this matters. I mean, different people have different approaches to their sexuality, and it does not always align. And what's important, really important, is that you know where you stand and how you want to behave and with whom. And you need to know in advance of those critical moments when it's decision time on where you're headed and what you want to do. And you should never, ever, ever get pushed into anything that makes you uncomfortable. And if you're pushing someone, that's a crime. It's wrong. You need to fix yourself. And I mean it. That's very, very serious. The only way that something this important and this intimate can work, short term or long term, is if people are on the same page and no one's getting pushed around. And this requires candor.
Yeah.
So, Lydia, I want to bring up the nonverbal communication because I think this really matters in this situation a lot. And I think we have to go there. Ladies, it's a proven fact that on average, women are linguistically more subtle and superior to men. Now, there's a lot of overlap. There's some really smart guys who are very articulate, but the theory goes, and I think it's fairly well established. What happens is when the two sexes go through puberty, guys get big and strong, and women realize they don't want to try to compete on the physical domain anymore because women are smaller on average. And they learn how to be powerful with their words and subtle with each other. All the while, the guys are learning to be tough, to protect, to be strong. And then you get into a relationship, and guys don't understand the subtleties that you understand. You think you're making a point non-verbally or even subtly verbally, and it goes, woo, guys don't get it. Okay. And it's not because the guys are stupid, it's because they don't speak the same language you do. I mean, there's language that women understand. The averages, I mean, there's a lot of overlap, right? But there's language that the women understand that the men don't. And I would even say the vice versa is probably also true. Men can understand stuff in their own world that women are going to be, what are they doing? Bewildered by. So what does this mean? If you want to stop a man from making sexual advances toward you, you can't be subtle, especially not when maybe the little head's thinking for the big one. You have to be very, very clear, and that takes a lot of candor. So, how do you do that, Lyd? Any ideas?
You just say, oh, hold up, hold up, hold up. I am not ready to go there yet. Here's what we can do, XYZ. Here's what I don't want to do, XYZ.
Mm. Well, that was straightforward. No tricks there. How about this one, too, though? How about addressing the subject beforehand? I mean, you're going to know in a relationship when people are feeling super affectionate, and you don't know where that's headed necessarily. So you can talk about it in advance. You can say, hey, this is how I feel about my sex life right now. This is what I want. And these are my goals. What are your goals? And listen. And if they're completely out of alignment, then you might need to say, you know what? That's not going to work. Or you might find out that they are in alignment. And then it's like a big relief. You can say, okay, now we have shared goals and we can respect each other by pursuing the right goals.
Right.
I think being open about it is so much better than being subtle. And gals, I know it's hard. It's so much easier to be subtle. But, and also, okay, you're sitting across the table from a date, and gals, you reach out and you kind of draw little pictures on the back of his hand while you gaze deeply into his eyes. You might just being affectionate and respectful and appreciative. He probably reads that another way. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying be clear about what you're doing. It's just really important. It's really important. Well, I think it's critical that you practice candor. And I think that as you become good at it, so you can be super direct and honest with people in a way that they respect, that's loving, I think you'll find good success in your life because people will know that you're trustworthy and they're going to know where they stand with you, and you can clear the fog.
Yeah. And
You know,
you'll know where you stand with you.
you'll know where you stand with you. And part of that is, I just want to go back to the whole, oh, yeah, I'll be there on Friday. And then you make up some excuse or ghost somebody. I want to go back to that. Don't commit to things you don't mean. That's candor too, right?
Yeah.
So if you means something, you want to be a part of it, commit to it, and then be true to your word. If you don't want to be a part of something, then don't commit to it.
Yeah, it's a really interesting exercise. You'll you'll find yourself when you're about to say no to something now rather than passively saying no later. It'll be really hard at first,
Mm, yeah,
but it'll get more and more easy and effortless as you do it more and come up with loving ways to explain your situation to other people.
sure.
And, there's also that other aspect too that people are terrified of, which is, well, if I'm honest, then they won't be friends with me anymore. If I use candor in this situation, they won't be friends with me
Yeah,
anymore.
and the opposite is true. I think that's when real friendships start.
Oh, absolutely. There have been so many uh, psychological studies that show that honest conflict that involves loving candor actually deepens relationships incredibly, both romantic and platonic relationships. So
Sure.
don't be afraid of being candid with somebody. Don't be afraid of candor, even if it does cause a few ripples in the conversation. The outcome, if done with love, is a lot better than the alternative, unless you're dealing with somebody who's pretty mentally unstable, at which point you kind of need to use some candor with yourself and ask yourself if that's actually the type of relationship that you would like to be in.
Yeah, good point. I mean, if you practice loving candor appropriately with somebody and they can't receive it, maybe they end up ghosting you. Well, that tells you that probably it was the right thing to happen, regretfully, but you can't win them all. And as long as, it saves much greater hurt later on.
Yeah, absolutely.
So candor doesn't mean that it's always going to work out. Sometimes it means that things are going to end when they should end.
Yeah, and it will bring you long-term peace. It
Yeah,
will it will disseminate the chaos in your life.
absolutely. Well, Lydia, thank you so much. Great ideas
Thank
on
you, Dad.
candor. I'm such a believer in this. I mean, in my book, number one is honesty, and candor's number two. So these are character traits that I think everyone needs to practice and develop if they want to live a better life. So, all right. Well, hey, everybody out there, we do love you, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Yep. Bye, guys.